down there, so you can head on back. And we're looking at Exodus 17 tonight. You're welcome to turn there. Exodus 17, it has a great battle in it against the Amalekites. It's honestly not much of a battle. God just pretty much wipes them out pretty quickly, but a really pretty awesome miracle that we'll get to looking at some things about how to win a battle, whether God does a miracle or not. How to win a battle, whether God does a miracle or not. Really, have you noticed? We don't see too many miracles that don't involve people doing their part or getting to do their part, getting busy with the results. Now, God could do it without us, can't he? But he chooses to involve us so often, even while he's doing a miracle. But even if he chooses not to do a miracle, there's often battles to win and a lot we get to do. So I wanted us right here in the auditorium during church to have a good fight, a battle, but one that we could do together in church without any bloodshed. So I thought we'd have a quick thumb wrestling tournament. So if you're interested, you are welcome to do that. Can I get one of my daughters up here to help me demonstrate? Brooklyn, come here. If it's been a while since you've done thumb wrestling, it is painless unless you have a thumb injury. And adults are certainly welcome to jump on in. Now, the girls say I cheat. I disagree with them. But yeah, technically you should keep your hands very still like this, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare thumb war. And then you try to pin the other person's thumb like that. So I've already beaten Brooklyn here, but why don't we see everyone that wants to be involved to get involved? Kids, I would encourage you, if you're up for it, challenge a grown-up. So why don't we do that for just a little bit here? We'll see how it goes. So Brooklyn, you're going to challenge me, Ma Ben. Why don't you find a grown-up? Why don't you challenge Miss Tina back there? Gracie, why don't you challenge Mr. Rich? You up for that? No? Oh, I don't know. Are my girls the only ones that are going to challenge people? I think a little marital battle here would be a good thing, but and if you win, move on, or if you're willing to give it a whirl. Okay, couple of grown-ups getting into it. I like it. Are you actually grabbing Mr. Rich's thumb? Oh, you let go once it started. Okay. Well, about one more minute, another battle or two. Oh, you taking me on. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare thumb war. Oh, you didn't even do the last two parts. Good job. All right, maybe one more battle. If you're in the middle of one or just getting started, that's all good. Did you win, Brooklyn? All right, you can finish the battle you're on and then come back and grab a seat, if you would, please. Push her thumb down, Miss Michelle. Pin her thumb. Get her, Miss Michelle. All right. Good job. Well, grab a seat for now, Brooklyn. Good job. Maybe some more thumb wrestling at the end. We'll see. Well, I imagine you can relate that in life we're often in battles, so we always need to remember how to fight those battles of the Christian life God's way. Even something as simple as thumb wrestling. There's some silly, fun rule breaking potentially, or rule rewriting. If you really want to win, just use your index finger. You can just sweep the thumb over. It's not normally allowed, but kids do tend to have a name for it. It's called a tag team. You're using your thumb and tagging in your finger. Anyway, usually not allowed, but even in the most simple of things, there's different ways to battle, not all of them good, but just a fun thing there. But in the Christian life, we need some reminders on how to face the battles we do. And I think we can pick up some great ones here in Exodus 17 on really some things that apply, whether God chooses to come through in a supernatural way or not. And again, as I've said before, I think if God just answers a prayer, maybe we don't call it a miracle, but it's God working. That's pretty much a miracle, isn't it? So no matter what. Well, we'll get a running start in verse 1 of Exodus 17. And again, we'll keep the kiddos in here for now, and then we'll do some snack and such at the end with them during a prayer request time in here. But first of all, before we even get to the battle, maybe you know what's coming. Moses is going to hold the rod up, hold his arms up, and they're going to be able to win as long as he keeps his arms up. A guy named Aaron, a guy named Hur are going to help him. But before we get there, let's look at the fact that we should go to God and follow what he says. If we're going to win battles, we need to go to God and follow what he says. Maybe you'd agree those are sometimes two very separate things. Sometimes we go to God. He shows us what to do, and then we don't follow him. They had a lesson to learn in Exodus 17, starting in verse 1. It says, "And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin," saw that last week, where they were there, "after their journeys, according to the commandment of the Lord, and pitched in Rephidim. And there was no water for the people to drink." So, legitimate struggle, legitimate need. You could call it a legitimate battle. They've got, before they're facing an army, they've got a battle to face. And it's easy for us to sit here while we're wondering how much it's going to rain tonight, and water's just to turn the faucet away. And some of you, you got to have the bottled stuff, and that's in the fridge, and probably the fridge at home. And it's easy for us to say, "Oh, you silly Israelites, why didn't you just pray to God?" Well, sometimes we don't go to God right away either. And then sometimes we go to God but don't follow what he says. Verse 2, "Wherefore the people did chide with Moses and said, 'Give us water that we may drink.'" I love how they think Moses just has like this giant cooler of water in his back pocket. I mean, there's like 2 million people here. I don't know why they go to Moses instead of going to God themselves, first of all. But have you ever gone to a person trying to get them to meet a need that only God could meet? I'm all for talking to people, but they're almost trying to wrench this out of Moses, complaining against Moses when really it was a need that they should have taken to God. But they said, "Give us water that we may drink." And Moses said unto them, "Why chide ye with me? Wherefore do ye tempt the Lord?" And the people thirsted for water. And the people murmured against Moses and said, "Wherefore is this that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst?" Yeah, things were great in Egypt. You got water turning to blood. Oh, we had plenty to drink in Egypt, which they were surviving, but they were slaves. Water's turning to blood, frogs hopping out of the water. It was terrible. And now they're going back to that. We need to be willing to remember that we should go to God and then follow what he says. Our responses often have to be trained. Didn't they need some training? Maybe you would say they needed someone, maybe Moses, to grab them by the shoulders and shake them once in a while and say, "Stop your complaining, stop murmuring, stop chiding." There's even several words used for basically the same thing. They needed to train their responses, and so do we. Man, responses need to become automatic and good. We need to build the habit of, wow, there's a need. Let's go to our knees and pray. I'm driving down the road and there's a need. I better not kneel right now. I'm going to cry out to God anyway. Those need to be our automatic responses, our first response, not our last resort. I think that's why we do fire drills in school. Anymore, it's intruder drills as well. I can admit I'm old enough that I grew up in a world without intruder drills. And I grew up here, so we didn't do tornado drills. Anybody grow up with tornado drills? Did you have bomb drills with, nuclear weapons parked fairly close? I don't think I have ever been in a bomb drill. I don't think so. Had some hurricane reminders in Florida. Don't know if we ever did drills, but the idea is that, in a fire drill, the alarm goes off, the muscle memory kicks in. You train your response. Do you know what the number one cause of death in a fire, not in a home as much as a large setting like a school or an arena, do you know what the number one cause of death is? Smoke? No, not even close, actually. Trampling. It's not flames and it's not smoke, even though those are terrible and those do claim lives. People getting trampled. Now, again, that's not a home situation. That'd be, large crowd, but that's why we drill it so much. And I say I'm along for the ride. I'm not involved in planning those or anything. But at the same time, the idea is that hopefully, there's a fire and I'm panicking, but there's a response that I've been trained to do. So I'm going to do that response. And it has saved lives you can look at all the stats with that. But that's why athletes practice the same thing over and over again. I guarantee there's football teams practicing already in the spring here against this defense or that defense. So they get into this situation or that situation situation and they'll know what to do. Hopefully baseball players and softball players at this point in the season don't have to still remind themselves, if a grounder's coming, put that glove into the ground. I still need those reminders. I don't play baseball or softball often enough, but hopefully those responses are being drilled and training. We can train our response to be prayer, not complaining. Henry Ward Beecher, a name you may know from the past, who was a famous American preacher and a great orator, he gave a great response to a situation. One day he went to his church to preach. And as he placed his Bible on the pulpit, as I did earlier there, he noticed a blank sheet of paper with the word fool written on it. F-O-O-L, fool, written on it. Someone obviously didn't agree with his preaching. Thank you for not doing that tonight, by the way. I appreciate it. Someone obviously didn't agree with his preaching. Beecher's keen sense of humor seized the moment. Apparently, he noticed it first with the congregation there. And so he lifted the paper for all to see. That's just the back of my notes there, but lifted it for all to see. And with his booming voice filled the church as he announced, generally, I receive letters from people who write and forget to sign their name. This letter is different. The person has signed his name but forgotten to write the letter. Pretty good, pretty humorous response. I imagine whoever didn't show up the next week is whoever had written the letter. I don't know that for sure, but he had trained himself to not respond the way many of us would have wanted to. Just in anger, lashing out. All right, let's have this out publicly right here, right now. Well, we can train our responses to be prayer, not complain. Prayer, not acting in anger. Maybe we're feeling the anger, and that takes a lifetime of training, but with God's help, we can get closer. Notice verse 4. And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, What shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go on before the people, and take with thee of the elders of Israel, and thy rod, really a symbol of God's power there, and thy rod, wherewith thou smotest the river, take in thine hand, and go. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come out water out of it, and the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the name of the place Massa and Meribah because of the chiding of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, Is the Lord among us or not? Boy, we need to be willing to train our responses. We need to be willing to get God's advice and follow it. We're going to look over for just a moment to Numbers 20. Feel free to turn over there. Moses got God's advice and followed it. The people hopefully started to learn, okay, there's a better way to do this. But do you remember the next time Moses got the same advice? Those Israelites, they're complaining again. They're good at it, aren't they? That has become an automatic response. I'll be honest, there's still certain situations where it's very easy for me to automatically complain. I've got to still work on those as well. And over in Numbers 20, flashing forward, and then we'll come back to Exodus 17, it says in Numbers 20, verse 1, Then the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, then they came into the desert of Zin in the first month, and the people abode in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. So they're going through a hard time, especially Moses there. And there was no water for the congregation. You know what their first response should have been, I think? Pray. And even wow, this is neat. We've got 2 million people, and God's got to provide water for us again. I wonder what he's going to do this time. I really think in our lives, as we do pray, that's our first response, see God work. It should be where we're excited to see how God's going to work it out even before he does. Anybody agree with me? That's going to take some more training for each of us, I imagine. But they should have been excited. Wow, there's a whole bunch of us. My kids are your kids thirsty? Yeah, we need water. I wonder what God's going to do. Well, that's not their response. It says, and they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and the people chode with Moses and spake, saying, Would God that we had died with our brethren when our brethren died before the Lord. And why have you brought up the congregation of the Lord into this wilderness, that we and our cattle should die there? And you'd think they would realize God is pretty invested in keeping them alive at this point. But verse 5, And wherefore have you made us to come up out of Egypt to bring us unto this evil place? It is no place of seed or of figs or of vines or of pomegranates, neither is there any water to drink. They're not in the promised land yet, but already complaining about where God's taken them. But as we look into verse 6, a little extra reminder that we need to keep things in God's hands. If we're going to fight battles the right way, we need to have the right response. We need to train our responses, but we need to keep things in God's hands. Have you ever noticed that we take matters into our own hands? That often means we make a mess, but it also means when we take matters into our own hands, we're taking matters out of God's hands. Now, we're not powerful enough to fully do that, but God will let us, what is the expression, have enough rope to hang ourselves, pull things into our own hands and make a mess of things. Notice verse 6. It says, "And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they fell upon their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto them." They nail it again. They go right to God. So far, so good. "And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Take the rod, and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes." Did you catch it? Probably are familiar with these accounts with what happened. God the first time told Moses to strike the rock. Take your rod, smack the rock, water's going to come out. Again, estimates are about 2 million people. Water for 2 million people out of a rock. I want to see what that looked like. It must have been amazing. God's going to do something similar here, but God says this time, speak to the rock. And it shall give forth water. I don't know if he was actually given a magic word. Water come forth. Jesus looks at a tomb later on in the New Testament and says, Lazarus, come forth. I don't know what Moses was supposed to say, but notice what happened. Verse 8, take the rod. Oh, let's skip ahead. Verse 9, "And Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him, and Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels." Moses is losing his cool, which I understand. "Must we fetch you water out of this rock?" Moses able to get water out of a rock? No. Aaron able to get water out of a rock? Now, I get the frustration. But notice verse 11, "And Moses lifted up his hand with his rod. He smote the rock twice." So he disobeyed. Again, getting God's advice and following it are often two different things. If we're going to win battles, we need to go to God as our first response. We need to get what he tells us to do, and we need to do it. But God's mercy is shown there at the end of verse 11. "And the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also." Now, there were consequences coming for Moses and Aaron, but God mercifully did provide water again for all of those people. I think it's just an amazing testament to God and his mercy. But let's be willing in these battles to do our part and to realize what's just God's. It's his job. There's nothing we can do about it. We might as well go to sleep right in the middle of a battle, right in the middle of what's going on. We might as well not stay up and worry about it. We might as well rest in the fact that God's got it. Well, next, as we get into the battle back in Exodus 17, again, they really fought a couple of battles that we've looked at with thirst and water, with complaining, with their need to go to God. Well, the next reminder I just have simply pray. Talked about it a lot, but I think it's worth talking about it again. We've talked about complaining a lot, but I think those reminders are good for all of us. Well, Exodus 17, verse 8. "Then came Amalek." Just going to pause after those three words. It was water. It'll be water again after. So we started before the battle. Now we're at the battle. Numbers was after the battle. But you see how it's kind of one battle after another? Anyone's life ever feel that way? Again, I've said it before, and it's not original to me, but a lot of times we're either in a storm or a battle, leaving a storm or a battle, or about to face a storm or a battle. You can look back at your life. Some of them are pretty small. Some of them aren't a big deal. Some of them are. But no matter what, let's fight those battles God's way. Let's be willing to pray. Back to verse 8. "Then came Amalek," the next battle there, "and fought with Israel and Rephidim. And Moses said unto Joshua, Choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in mine hand." Again, that rod, holding it up, it's just a symbol of God's power. Moses is smart. He realizes this rod is just a stick. Now, Jim Shetler, the pastor we went through Victory on Sunday nights for a while, pastor I quote often. He was traveling, I believe, in Canada years ago, and on a hike, and he found what he said, that's Moses' rod. Now, he wasn't being literal. He wasn't thinking that, somehow it drifted over to, no, I'm sure Moses' rod is rotten and buried in a bunch of dirt now, but he found it was the perfect thing. He figured out for like $3 he could mail that stick home. And so he couldn't take it on a plane. It was too big. So he mailed himself Moses' rod, and he had that there down in Pensacola, Florida at that time. And he got to show us his version of Moses' rod. Well, Jim Shetler knew it was just some stick. Moses realized, hey, the power is God's. And really, he's going to be there holding his arms up. That was a cultural posture of prayer. Now, if you want to experience what that's like in a little bit, when I go eat a snack with the kids and do a craft with the kids, the entire time y'all are taking prayer requests and praying, just hold your hands up the entire time. Anybody glad that's not an American cultural posture of prayer? There's nothing spiritual about it. We'd be more down on our knees, but at the same, again, you can pray in any posture. But Moses, he's not doing anything mythical, anything really mysterious. He's basically saying, Joshua, you're the military leader. You go lead the army. I'm going to be up here seeking God. Moses' position, again, was the cultural posture of prayer. And it's just a reminder, if we're going to fight battles, we need to pray. It's been said, when we work, we work. But when we pray, God works. Now, our amazing God will work sometimes even when we don't pray. Have you ever gotten an answer to a prayer you didn't pray? God ever do anything for you and you didn't ask him to? Yeah, again, he can do so much more, exceeding abundantly above all that we could ask or think. But James 5:16, the end of the verse, the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. It does a lot. It accomplishes a lot. I guarantee you there are things that will happen, good things, in your life, in our church, families, the area, the world, if we pray. And while God is going to be good no matter what, there are good things in our lives, our church, our families, our world that will not happen if we don't pray. Let's take the time to pray. Y'all get to do that in here. I'll pray with the kiddos and all, and it'll be great. But that's something we should value in our lives. It was in June of 2013, news broadcasts across the country featured a little boy named Grayson Clamp. You can look up pictures if you want, doing something he had never done before. He was 3 years old, and he was born without auditory nerves that carry sound to the brain. Attempts to restore his hearing with a cochlear implant, those have helped many people, but they were unsuccessful for little Grayson. So doctors at the University of North Carolina tried an experimental procedure to implant an auditory nerve directly into his brain. You can imagine the risks involved with that. Well, this procedure was a great success back there in 2013 for Grayson, and millions of people enjoyed seeing the look of wonder and joy on the little boy's face when he heard his daddy's voice for the first time. Today, with the technology available, communication can be in an instant, but probably all of you can relate to hearing so-and-so's voice, whether in person, by the phone, maybe it was a surprise. You weren't expecting to hear their voice. You realize God delights, even more than that, I would say, in hearing our voice, in hearing us talk to him. Isn't that amazing? We'll think of prayer as, God, I need to worship you, and I need to ask you for things, and please, and all of that. It's also received by God. He wants to hear from us. The Old Testament talks a lot about incense, and that was a big part of the tabernacle worship and the temple worship. You know what incense was a picture of? Prayer. And so everything you've ever learned about the beauty of that symbol and incense in the Old Testament and all of that, that's a picture of prayer. It was a sweet-smelling savor. We can have a sweet-sounding savor maybe in God's ears if we'll take the time to talk to him. Well, spoiler alert, Israel's gonna win the battle. We'll talk about it here from Exodus 17. But really the secret wasn't Joshua being a brilliant military mind, even though he probably was. And it wasn't Moses doing anything particularly special. It was God doing something miraculous and amazing. Well, if we're going to fight battles God's way, we should pray. We should also contribute. We should also contribute. Verse 10. So Joshua did as Moses had said unto him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. Maybe you know what's going to happen. They're going to help Moses hold up his arms and all of that. But do you see it? Moses had a role. We'll see more about Aaron and Hur's role in just a moment. Joshua had a role. Each soldier had a role. Nothing works properly without each person doing their role. You're in a battle, guarantee it's affecting people around you. You making the situation better or worse? Complaining or contributing? Are you doing your part? And you can apply that to your life, your family, again, our church, on and on down the road. I've always heard and try to live this out. If you go a place, you want to leave it better than when you found it. You borrow someone's car, you return it better than you found it. A lot of times it's a full tank of gas, and anymore it's like you could hand them gold or you could fill the tank up, whichever one you want to do. Anyway, the price is getting a little bit better, at least. But at the same time, I hope we would want to leave a place better than we found it. I hope we'll do that with people's lives as best we can. Tell them about Jesus, encourage them, contribute to the battle, and by the way, wouldn't you agree, everyone we encounter is probably dealing with some sort of battle. Many of them we won't ever know about. You ever had someone just smile and say a kind word, and it meant the world to you? They had no idea what was going on, or maybe they did. And again, maybe they bought you a cup of coffee or, cinnamon roll. Those are always a good bet for people. That's not a hint. I don't need a cinnamon roll. No, I'm good. But, they just do a little something. Just doing what we can. And again, we should pray for each other. We should pray for people, but we should be contributing to the battle. Isn't there a spiritual battle always going on? Let's contribute to that. Let's make things better. We need each person doing their role. Can you kind of picture this scene? I've never seen a video where they reenacted this battle. I've probably seen some flannel graphs growing up. I enjoyed that. Probably seen some artist depictions, but I can just kind of picture it. Moses, Aaron, Hur, probably others, but up top, he's going to hold up the rod. They're going to help hold his arms up in just a moment. Battle down below. Really just everyone contributing as the Lord led them. Everyone doing their role, their part. Well, let's be intentionally encouraging to others in the battle. Goes right along with that. Let's contribute, but then let's be intentionally encouraging. Verse 11, and it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. So maybe that seals it for why we're looking at this as a miracle that pictures the power of God. This was, yes, a great military victory. There were some good weapons involved. Joshua probably did some very skilled things. There were probably many skilled soldiers. This is a miracle, though, right? Moses holds up his hands, they win. His arms get tired, which if you've ever held your hands up for even a minute without boxing gloves on, let alone if you've ever tried that. Boxers, we think how strong they are to take a punch and throw a punch. Boxers holding both hands up like this in front of their face is an accomplishment in and of itself. I have no desire to try to punch someone else in the face while they're trying to punch me in the face. That's not my idea of fun. But holding your arms up is a big job. Moses' arms get tired in this battle. He pulls them down, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. Verse 12, but Moses' hands were heavy. And they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on the one side and the other on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. God's miraculously providing the victory, but Moses doesn't have to do his part by himself. Moses is able to have Aaron and Hur helping him. And I've heard some great messages on being an Aaron or a Hur. I mean, it is H-U-R. It's not H-E-R. It's not about, gender anything there. But man, have you ever had some people that have figuratively or literally held up your arms? I remember hearing from a pastor that said he was, I think, in a tough situation, preaching to kind of a tough crowd one time, and he got a text right before he had this awesome opportunity to hopefully, preach the gospel to hundreds, maybe it was even thousands, and he just got a text from a pastor friend of his, says, hey, we're holding up your hands today. And they both knew what they meant. It was from this passage. I wonder whose hands we can hold up today. A lot of people are one encouragement away from keeping going and one lack of encouragement away from giving up. There are a lot of people about to give up, aren't there? Let's be willing to encourage people to keep going. Help them see that they're making a difference. Help them see. I imagine, I don't know, I'm not saying the Bible doesn't say this, but I imagine Aaron, Hur, and Moses all noticed what was going on. Like, hey, okay, so yeah, okay, we're winning, we're losing. I don't think they did the cartoon thing like, and just kind of try to manipulate the battle. But they all got what was going on. So I would almost guarantee, just my opinion, but I would almost guarantee Aaron, Moses with the arms up. They're like, look, I'm holding your arm up with this hand, but I'm going to point with the other one. Look, we're winning. God's doing it. This is amazing. I guarantee they pointed out the victory God was giving. Verse 13, and Joshua discomfited or whooped Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for memorial in a book. Can you imagine what book that might have been? Yeah, book, exactly. Good job, Ben. He's the only one that answered out loud. But yeah, you get to read that book. And rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out of remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi, for he said, because the Lord hath sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Again, the rod represented God's power, holding it up, again, kind of a cultural symbol of prayer, position of prayer. It's really just a symbolic way to seek God. I had the privilege one time, a couple years ago, during a summer camp, the evangelist that came in, I think his name was Dwight Smith, but a good guy. He always would, when he preached, an evangelist, he's traveling around everywhere, he would ask people during each service to leave the service beforehand and skip his message and pray. And he would ask adults at teen camp. He wasn't telling the teens to skip out or anything. But we're there as youth pastors and youth leaders and just people that care about these teens. He wanted people out praying. So in a way, Jen and I and a couple others at that service got to pray. And we were in the other services that week. But we got to kind of hold his hands up as he preached. I'll tell you, God did some stuff that week. It was awesome to be a part of it. I was literally skipping church, basically, to do it. And again, that's not my habit to ask you to leave church to pray. And if you get up and walk out the back, you better fall to your knees out there and pray and not be skipping. No, you're fine. But isn't that something we can do for each other during a service? Please do. Please pray for me. Isn't that something we can do on a Tuesday morning or a Thursday afternoon? Let's lift each other up in prayer. Let's encourage each other every way we can. And then lastly, when God gives us victory, that needs to give us confidence in God. If we're going to win battles and fight them God's way, we need to remember the victories. I think that's why verse 14, the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua. Did Joshua have a couple more battles to fight at this point? He had a whole promised land to take, and he didn't fight all of those battles, but so many of them. More battles are coming. Let's prepare with faith, not just with muscle and training. A few centuries before Christ, Alexander the Great conquered almost all of the known world, as you probably know, with his military strength, cleverness, and diplomacy. Brilliant military leader, as a very young man for that sort of life. One day, Alexander and a small group of soldiers approached a strongly defended walled city. I have not checked this out. I imagine this story is true. I kind of hope it's not. Alexander, standing outside the walls, allegedly raised his voice, demanding to see the king. The king approached the battlements above the invading army, agreed to hear Alexander's demands. Surrender to me immediately, commanded Alexander. The king laughed. Why should I surrender? We're up here, you're down there. We have you outnumbered. You're no threat to us. Alexander was ready to answer the challenge. He said, allow me to demonstrate why you should surrender. Alexander ordered his men to line up single file and start marching. He marched them straight toward a sheer cliff that dropped hundreds of feet below to rocks below. The king and his soldiers watched in shocked disbelief as one by one, Alexander's soldiers marched without hesitation right off the cliff to their deaths. After 10 soldiers had died, Alexander ordered the rest of his men to stop and to return to his side. As the story goes, you can look up whether it's historically accurate or not, the king and his soldiers surrendered on the spot to Alexander the Great because of his command over his soldiers and their faith in Alexander. Apparently, faith in Alexander the Great simply wasn't so, great. His name was great, maybe not his leadership. I would not have wanted to be one of those men. I don't think I would have followed Alexander that blindly. I just don't think I would have. But faith in God will always lead us the right way. I don't think I could have put my confidence in Alexander after that if I'd been the 11th soldier in line there. Would have been grateful that, the halt was called, but I would have had a hard time putting my confidence in him, and even with many other things he did. But we just get more and more reasons all the time to keep our confidence in God. God might tell us to do some things that in the moment they sound about as crazy as Alexander ordering us to walk off a cliff. But by the way, I've known of people that would give similar testimony. If God tells you to walk off a cliff, he's got like steps all along the way. I've seen a picture of that, like in the fog, the person that in a cartoon couldn't see the next step, but God was telling them to step, and they took a step forward, and there was a step there. Another step forward, and there was a step there. Usually that's not literal. God's never told me to step off a cliff. I'm going to probably double check that I'm hearing him correctly. If he does, that's going to have to be a pretty clear call, and I'm sure God never will. But God has called me to take some steps of faith, where I didn't see what was coming. But when I've won battle after battle after battle with him, seen him come through time after time after time, that should give me the confidence, should give all of us the confidence to step forward in faith, not just with muscle, not just with military skill. Joshua would do that. The people of Israel would do that. Well, as we wrap up, life has battles. Probably not anything new to you there. Let's make sure we're fighting them God's way. Let's go to God. Let's go to God's word and make sure we're fighting the battles of the Christian life God's way. I'm just going to close our message in a quick word of prayer, hand it over to Brother Rich, and y'all can share some prayer requests in here, and kiddos can head out with me. Let's pray. God, thank you that when we fight battles, we never fight them alone. Thank you that we can go to you right away, that so often you're already working out the solution even before we see what's coming. Thank you for your goodness. Thank you for victories. Thank you for, I'm sure, hundreds of times we've seen you work in our home, in our church, in our families, in our lives, in our world around us. May we remember those, and may they build our confidence and our faith in you for the next battle and even just the next good days. May we keep our faith right there in you. I pray that you'll bless the rest of our evening, and we thank you in Jesus'